Hello again, and welcome back to another webinar in support of Connecticut schools and their communities. My name is Scott Newgass, a social worker with the State Department of Education, and today this message is specifically for school personnel, administrators, teachers, and student support staff, and is intended to provide information on how best to support students experiencing tragedies and to prepare for re-entry to schools later this year. It is especially important at this time for schools to assist their students in understanding some of the current fears and tensions predominating the news, with frightening imagery and confusing or conflicting messages concerning the protests taking place across our country. The country is in the midst of a crisis of conscience, and each of us can contribute to a restored peace and genuine equality. Some simple strategies will help us do that. This webinar will address self-care, connections with adult parents and guardians as allies in meeting student needs, and conversational and media strategies to establish person-to-person connectedness. Today, we're joined by Kristin Pracitto, Vice President of Child Services for Wellmore Behavioral Health, Doctors Jeana, Bracey, and Jaime Locurto from the Child Health and Development Institute, Kim Marshall, Director of Community-Based Services at the Department of Children and Families, and Meagan Rolla, Naugatuck Assistant Principal and District Administrator for Project Aware. They will be providing us with some ideas on how to support students and their families during circumstances that limit our physical interactions for health and safety reasons. As you listen, try to be aware of your own needs and how you would like to have them fulfilled by others. Very likely, your needs are not so different from your neighbor's needs, and thinking about how you might have your own needs met can help inform how you can help others most effectively. That said, one more time, remember the instructions on board a flight. If an emergency happens, grab your own oxygen mask first and take care of yourself. That way you can take care of some others. With that thought in mind, I would now like to introduce my colleague, Kristin Pracitto, who will be reminding you of some important steps you can take towards self-care.
Well, thank you so much for having me talk about this. Talking about self-care sounded like an easy task within all of these different agendas because it's the one thing that social workers can and do often talk about, self-care. And in fact, it's a theme everywhere we look these days. We see it discussed on talk shows, on late night, on news shows, on TED Talks, and on the ever-present memes and video clips on social media. But as humans, we know it can be easy to talk about ideas around self-care, but it can be a far different issue to put a plan in place that works. Self-care is about knowing ourselves, understanding what emotions are and how our bodies feel, and what we need to be okay. Unfortunately, saying that you're okay, those quick responses that we give acquaintances, I'm okay, I'm fine, I'm good, often cover up for the fact that we're not actually okay. A naive definition may equate being okay as not feeling anything uncomfortable. And we know this isn't real. We're human, we're emotional beings. We can and should celebrate the diversity of our feelings. But those feelings can be strong and wonderful or strong and overwhelming. In these days, during this strange new reality that we're all in, being okay is just plain hard. There's so much about life that's different, stressful, new, and overwhelming that we're all struggling to be okay. Practicing self-care is about developing a sense of what to do when you're feeling a strong emotion to help you get through to your next emotion. Practicing self-care is about doing things regularly that help you find balance and peace. This is not about being unemotional. It's about being in touch with your emotions and understanding how to be okay, no matter what's happening around you. We think about this ideal of being okay as a scale from 1 to 10. A 1 indicates that you're really struggling with too much of everything, too much of every emotion. And a 10 means that your feelings and your emotions are more balanced and more centered. Self-care is about moving closer to feeling balanced, not in an absolute way. A 10 isn't the goal. Self-care is about moving toward the goal and understanding what you need to do that. Self-care is about Also, doing things that you like, but in a thoughtful, mindful way. The activities that we enjoy, whether it be physical activity, art, music, dance, focusing on a spiritual practice, also provides us a structure and a repetitive process that helps us to forget the running narrative in our heads and be utterly present in the moment. Self-care is really what you make of it. It's a routine and a practice that you create for you. Your practice is personal and intentional. And self-care needs to shift and change as we learn, grow, and change in response to the world around us. And to be real, the world around us looks very different today than it did in January. We were worried then about winter storms and wildfires in Australia. But I was listening to a presentation the other day that I found really helpful to my perspective on this pandemic and my reactions to it. Stephen Berkowitz, who's a child psychiatrist who specialized in childhood trauma for several decades and a former colleague of mine, was asked about comparing the pandemic to the adjustment that occurs after a profound trauma. He stated that what we are most experiencing is very different than an acute trauma process. What's happening for most of us is a subtle, pervasive shift in everything around us. Things appear very similar to regular life, but every step of every piece of life is just slightly askew. Each of those differences cumulatively creates stress. And then that's compounded by real and strong emotions related to fear and insecurity are around our reactions to those differences and those strong emotions. There's then another layer of changes on both subtle and profound ways to the way that we act, interact, and react to each other. Add the very real pressures around health and job loss and homeschooling and economic fragility, and it all just becomes hard. And sometimes it becomes intolerable. And when the stress recedes, and it will, we're all inevitably changed by this process. As educators, you are the people who put others first through most of your days. Your focus is caring for and supporting the education of young people. There is nothing easy about your mission on the best of days. You are balancing the professional transition to online lessons and all the creativity, effort, and work that goes along with that with your own personal life and all of those subtly or profoundly changing experiences in the world. And so as you face this crisis, figuring out what helps you to feel more centered, more balanced becomes that much more important. In order to be the best educators you can be, you need to put practices in place that can allow you to take care of yourself first. Given all of this, these are some of the things that I've learned are important. And I share it because it's easy to write these things down when you're studying them or learning them. But particularly today, it's much harder to remember this. It should never be our goal not to feel. Feelings show we are alive and involved in the world. As trite and ridiculous as that may sound, it is true. It can be our goal to understand whatever our feeling is and know that it's okay for right now and that it will pass or shift. Other than profound things like grief and loss, we tend to feel those strong feelings in small bursts of intensity that then subside. We need to remember that feelings can be a little bit more manageable if we shift our focus to something else. Many people talk about grounding techniques that can help. Things like looking around and finding things in your present environment that represent the five senses. So touch, taste, smell, vision, and hearing. Or focusing on a body movement that you used to do quite regularly. I have a friend who flexes up on her toes like she used to do when she was in a ballet class in her childhood. You need to take some time to think carefully about what you like, what you don't like, and what gives us that sense of balance. Self-care is about finding those activities and creating a structure or ritual that happens regularly to move you toward a 10 in that okay zone. One easy thing to think about is the importance of breathing carefully and thoughtfully, to be mindful and aware of the process of breathing. I've taught mindful breathing to many people over the years and know how helpful it can be. But I learned it firsthand in a crisis a couple of years ago. In these odd days when you're feeling out of control or feeling panicky about the things that are happening around you, concentrate on breathing on the most basic level. Be present and feel the breath entering your nose, filling your lungs, moving your chest cavity, and exiting your body. It does help. In putting ourselves first and creating a ritual around self-care, we enable ourselves to be more engaged and more present with others. There are thousands of variations and ideas about things to do that can be considered self-care activities. Not surprisingly, the things that often support self-care are also the things that are being recommended as ways to get through this pandemic and all the changes that have happened to our life's rhythms. Create a ritual and an order that can be repeated. Even the process of moving from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 encourages a sense of completion and competence and fosters an increased sense of control. Give yourself credit and praise for moving from step to step. Find those things that you can do that make you happy and take some time to understand why the activity makes you happy. And perhaps most importantly of all, developing self-care practices need to be flexible in response to what's around us. What used to work for us may not work so well in the COVID pandemic. Take time to think about why and think about how to mix things up to get your own needs met. Remember that you're important. First and foremost, treat yourself well. And in doing so, you invest in your own ability to find balance and peace, which then can be used as the more stable foundation for all the new ways that you're trying to reach your students. Self-care really is a gift you give to yourself. And in these changing times of COVID-19, this act of grace and generosity to yourself is one that you shouldn't pass up. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Tim Marshall. I am the Director of Community Mental Health at the Department of Children and Families. And as a result of this kind of video series and the ongoing support for schools in response to the COVID isolation period that we're in, we decided that we would do a part of this on what services might be available, services and supports that might be available for schools and schools personnel and working with students and any concerns that they might have for students at this time. So appreciate you all joining and continuing to participate. The Department of Children and Families, most folks know us as Protective Services, but some folks don't realize that we have responsibility for the general mandate for children's behavioral health services, that is both mental health and substance use. We have some other responsibilities also, but so we fund quite a number of services in the communities for kids and their families, and that includes students. And we've really focused in the last number of years on trying to do a better job linking our services that's available to children and families in Connecticut directly to schools and school personnel. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of those services and then maybe how you might be able to get connected to them, especially during this period of time with the COVID isolation and the increased stress that is on families and staff and parents doing the school at home period and the work from home period. So just want to acknowledge. So the first thing that we really want to acknowledge that most schools and school personnel are familiar with, and that's the mobile crisis system. So during this COVID isolation period, mobile crisis throughout the state is still active. The reality is most calls coming in are being handled remotely through telemedicine services and telehealth services. That's a virtual experience. But additionally, there's also addressing calls through just telephonically or through calls. So if families do not have the appropriate hardware or connectivity, the service of mobile crisis intervention can still occur. They also are continuing to do face-to-face assessments for the most acute need, kids and families, and will do a face-to-face if there's not a positive answer to 3 COVID screening questions. And so they will do 3 questions on COVID. And if any of those are positive, then for safety purposes, they're unable to go face-to-face. But if those questions are negative, they'll do a face-to-face assessment and actually facilitate kids that are in need of hospitalization or inpatient services. So mobile crisis is operational and fully available. And most folks know that you connect to that service by dialing 211. And what's really, really important is that you press 1 a third time and then 1 again a 4th time. So it's actually 2111. So you do 211 and then 1 and 1 again. And each of those ones you're prompted to do so. And you'll get a live clinician, and they're still doing assessments. As I said, mostly those are done telephonically. One of the other additional services that is available that is very helpful at this time, again, also during the COVID experiencing, they are still taking referrals, and that's care coordination. And I'll give my contact information at the end of this and my staff person's contact information at the end of this, so you have that to be a simple contact for any of the services I'll talk to you about. So care coordination will engage families and help them develop their own plan of care, in particular at these times of COVID isolation, help them really develop some coping strategies on how to handle with the work from home and the school from home stress, and also help to get kids out and about and maybe involved in a variety of activities, and maybe assist with connectivity to others, their peers and others. So that's a huge service category that's available, care coordination. From there, I would also suggest that the intensive in-home services are also still available and doing services. Intensive in-home has a whole alphabet soup that I won't go into, but essentially it's designed to be more intensive and to do a number of hours a week in a family's home. Again, during COVID, most of those are happening through telehealth and telemedicine intervention through virtual connections. And again, could also be supplemented with telephone support so that families have a variety of options. What we are experiencing at this time, just checking in with all the behavioral health providers throughout the state, is there are some definite advantages to some of the virtual connections. We're finding that for many of the service categories, youth are actually more engaged, not less, than in face-to-face. So that's been a nice, pleasant surprise. The other thing we're experiencing, particularly in these last couple of weeks, is that there's a lot of virtual fatigue that has set in, particularly, again, with a lot of work from home schooling, work from home and schooling from home. So there's a lot of family virtual fatigue. So there are some families that are asking for a little bit of a break now. But for some families, it may, in fact, be the exact time for some additional support or mental health support. So the intensive in-home would, again, be a good option for potential family involvement to get involved in that. And then finally, I think one of the really cornerstones of the system is outpatient services. Again, those are traditionally, weekly appointments. They tend to be 45 or 50-minute hours. Again, a treatment plan is devised and developed with the family and the child, and goals are set, and then conversations occur to kind of meet those needs. And all of that is, again, been converted in Connecticut to virtual telehealth and telemedicine connectivity. So that is also still available. So we would encourage school personnel to make use of mobile crisis, care coordination, intensive in-home, and outpatient services. And those services are really the cornerstone of the children's behavioral health system. All of them are still working, and all of them are up and available. So I just remind folks of that. Additionally, there's a couple of support opportunities to take advantage of if you have not been made aware. The Department of Children and Families, on behalf of the state of Connecticut, stood up a line called Talk It Out. And the website is talkitoutct.com. That's talkitoutct.com. That's all one word. and that will bring you to a website. And it really is designed for a compassionate presence, a support and care, and a listening ear. It is a non-clinical warm line where callers, usually parents and caregivers of children, calling to get some support because of the extra stress of the family at home at this time. And trained call specialists are awaiting to be able to just talk folks through. And again, they can do a variety of things, just listen to kind of the stressors of the day, parenting, trying to get through, maybe give some stress reduction kind of suggestions, maybe make some suggestions for some referrals, or just an opportunity to just talk it out. So that is available both virtually on the website, talkitout.com, as well as the actual phone line, which is 1-833-258-5011. That's 1-833-258-5011. And those are trained specialists who are available to talk it out. Additionally, I would suggest there is the DCF website, and on that you can click on the COVID page, and on that there's a number of links around food security, around internet support, around basic needs, and other activities and connections there. So that's where DCF has gotten a number of hits on that website for a lot of different needs. And again, these resources are available to all citizens of Connecticut. You don't have to be involved in the Department of Children and Families to receive those resources or to go onto the website for those services. So I refer you to the DCF website. And again, that's easy if you just put in the Department of Children and Families. Just be sure to put in Connecticut and you'll go to the government portal and you'll be brought to the DCF website. And again, there's a bunch of resources that are listed there. And finally, for any questions about any of these services, you can email me, tim.marshall@ct.gov. That's Tim, Tim.Marshall, MARSHALL, 2 L's, @ct.gov. Or my staff person, Mary Cummings, @ct.gov. And that's Mary, MARY, Cummings, CUMMINS, @ct.gov. So those are the services. Hang in there. The COVID isolation experience is challenging for all people, and just take care of yourselves. Pay attention to your own health and mental health, and good luck. Thank you. And I'm Tim Marshall from the Department of Children and Families. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Tim. My name is Jaime Locurto, and with me today is Jeana Bracey. We are from the Child Health and Development Institute here in Connecticut and are talking to you today about how schools can strengthen their relationship with families and their communities, both at the individual and systems level, in order to meet familial need. When we think about strengthening family, school, community partnerships, I want you to imagine a pyramid. These partnerships serve as the pyramid's foundation and make individual level supports possible. And without these partnerships, the entire system would crumble. Next, and equally as important, is having a healthy school workforce. Educators and the entire school community need to be physically and mentally healthy in order to care for and support students and their families. It's important that these folks recognize when they need help and access care that is appropriate for their needs. And let me be clear, health doesn't only apply to us when we are sick, but rather includes engaging in daily self-care strategies that aid in our overall well-being. So, we strengthen these partnerships when working with students. Similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs and mapping onto a multi-tiered system of support, Tier 1 includes meeting all students' basic needs. So this could be access to educational material, resource security like food and shelter, and also integrating social emotional competencies focused on mental health, substance use, and suicidality into academic curriculum. All students should receive these basic necessities, which can be supported by anyone across the school community. Covering these basic needs from a strengths-based and health equity approach communicates to families that you understand these items are priorities and you're willing and able to help provide the support. Next, Tier 2 resources are provided to those students in need of additional support who aren't logging on consistently, aren't engaged with the online curriculum, or who you noticed pre-COVID were already needing extra support. These students would benefit from a check-in via a phone call home or even a friendly email. Have a conversation with the student's caregivers, or if the student is old enough, you can have that conversation directly with them. Ask them how they are doing and see what support they need. To increase engagement, one district had their students post something nice about their favorite teacher, which they found increased student engagement overall. These types of engagement help maintain meaningful relationships between you and the student and their families, and shows them you care, thus creating a positive school climate. Finally, for those students who continue to struggle with engagement, you'll need to move to Tier 3 supports and connect students to internal support staff, work with your school-based health center, or refer the student and their caregivers to a local community provider to access the services and supports that Tim mentioned previously. Have an honest conversation with the student and their caregivers, communicating why you think they could benefit from talking to someone who can help meet their needs. Establishing relationships with local supports now can create meaningful long-term relationships with these providers moving forward. Remember, you don't need to do this alone. Utilizing the strengths of other organizations can complement the work you are doing and can provide targeted supports that the school cannot offer. Next, we'll go to Jeana Bracey, who is going to talk to you about meeting the needs of families at a systems level.
Thank you, Jaime. For those of you who are school leaders and administrators, it's particularly important to be thinking about how to incorporate these strategies into a coordinated and comprehensive framework at the whole school and district levels. By integrating the pyramid model Jaime highlighted to include universal social and emotional learning and supports, school climate and culture, suicide prevention, and trauma-informed behavioral health services and supports, including staff wellness, you will develop a solid foundation for addressing students' and families' needs through crisis and beyond in a sustainable way. Just as you've recently transitioned curriculum and academic support into developmentally appropriate virtual and distance learning, you can take similar steps to integrate these social, emotional, and behavioral health supports. First, be aware of what regulations, standards, and policies may need to be adapted at the district level to facilitate these changes. While the COVID-19 pandemic initially required a full-scale crisis response, it is important to consider the ongoing impact of chronic stress to the school community and how transitional supports will be needed between school years and beyond to foster resilience. Next, use data to help you document what innovations and creative approaches are working well, what modifications are needed, and how your staff and students respond to the changes. Schools and districts that we have worked with who have excelled at implementing integrated social, emotional, and behavioral health supports have done so through implementation science models or tools such as the SHAPE system for school mental health quality and sustainability. To successfully facilitate this process, genuine communication is key across school, family, community partnerships. Staff need to know that they have the permission and formal support from leadership to think creatively and to also balance their needs and wellness. Families need two-way communication with not just outreach, but opportunities to be heard through direct communication and the ability to share the successes and challenges of this transformational process, but beyond concrete feedback regarding connectivity and access. Engage those in your network who have natural strengths in this area. And finally, don't recreate the wheel and don't hesitate to ask for help from your local community or state level resources. Tim mentioned ways you can connect to many state-funded services directly, and we at SHDI can also support you in linking to additional technical assistance and resources, most at no cost to your school. See our website for more information on our trauma-informed multi-tiered system of support framework, all of our school-based services, such as the School-Based Diversion Initiative and CBIT's trauma-focused group interventions, additional COVID-related resources, as well as a 4-part newsletter specific to resources on staff and caregiver wellness, digital citizenship, and social emotional learning. We also host a website for parents and caregivers regarding children's mental health. For those of you interested in state-level policy and best practice supports, learn more about the Trauma-Informed School Mental Health Task Force as a work group of the statewide behavioral health plan for children. To assess the quality and sustainability of your school or district, and aid in strategic planning, let us link you to the SHAPE system at the University of Maryland Center for School Mental Health. We offer free technical assistance to help you access and complete this valuable tool. And of course, please reach out to us directly by email.
Hi, my name is Rolla, and I'm the lead counselor and district administrator for Project Aware in Naugatuck. And today I'm going to be discussing emotional connectedness. As you've heard from the other participants in this webinar prior to my sharing out, it's critical in this time to ensure that we're really connecting to others. We must remember we're socially distancing ourselves from others to ensure health and safety, not emotionally distancing ourselves. That being said, now more than ever, it's so critical to ensure we're creating a climate for our students, our families, and our staff to ensure we're prioritizing relationships. We know relationships are key for a successful school system, and there's no difference in distance learning. With our current situation, however, we're missing the ability for teachers to debrief in the halls, to check in with their colleagues between classes, for students to smile and laugh with each other in the classroom, for parents to chat and check in with each other in the parking lots during pickup time. However, we can and we must be creative to ensure that we allow for this interconnectedness to occur within the online platform and through other avenues. So today I'm going to give you some ideas to help create this emotional connectedness through this distance learning platform. So the first idea is making sure you check in with families, students, and staff. There's a lot of different avenues of ways to do this. The best way is to use a video so that people can really see your face. It's the best way without being able to have face-to-face contact. Another way is just a simple phone call. On this, just allow the participant you're meeting with time to vent. Maybe they're doing well, but let them take the lead. Maybe they want to talk about instructional expectations. Maybe they want to just have business as usual, but just use the time to show that you care and that the person you're connecting with is so important to you. Another thing that's a great idea is teachers can have virtual morning meetings with their classes. Whether they pre-record these morning meetings or do them live is kind of dependent on district expectations or personal and professional comfort level with various platforms, which is understandable and vary. However, building and this community virtually and allowing students to greet each other, share their own experience via distance learning, maybe even give a tour of their home, kind of whatever students want to do, is critical for maintaining this culture of caring that students and teachers need at this time. One tool that's been really useful if meetings can't occur live is Flipgrid. So Flipgrid is a tool where students can reply to a prompt with a short video response. And that's pre-recorded, so it doesn't have to be live. Another thing is continuing the social emotional learning that schools do school-wide using distance learning. So it could be any PBIS positive behavior initiatives that schools have been doing, have support staff sharing videos of themselves practicing mindfulness, have students teach you something that they've used as a strategy to self-regulate, involve families, have students and families talk to each other about their emotions, how they're feeling each day, ask them why they're feeling that way and have them video and share out. Do this in meetings with staff too. Really model when you're meeting with even just adults, administration, talk about emotions and respect those emotions. So if someone's saying they're feeling sad, frustrated, honor this feeling. And instead of telling them, cheer up, this is what you can do to feel better, really listen and just be a shoulder to lean on for them. Another great thing to do is sending messages to students and staff and families through social media, your distance learning classrooms with specific strategies for self-care. So I know self-care was discussed prior to my part of the presentation, but this is something that's critical throughout this whole online learning platform. Anything from taking deep breaths to getting exercise to just stepping away from phones, computers, and just unplugging from technology, taking breaks. But ask people to share examples of utilizing these strategies and taking risks and share these on social media. Another thing with videos that's been great is a lot of schools I've seen have created videos for their entire community where staff or students or teachers are holding up signs where they're saying that they miss their students, they love them. It's teachers dancing, doing different things, showing their talents, and putting them all together with music. That's been really powerful and shows that community is still united, even though they're not physically together. One video that was cool that was done in my district was a middle school teacher challenged her students to complete their work to ensure more engagement. And she said if the work was completed, if the work completion increased by 75%, she would have her own children at home pie her in the face. And she was able to get 100% work completion from this. So just be creative and be fun. And that's what gets people excited and build that community. You could write messages of hope and gratitude using chalk on your sidewalk. Just write, if you're a teacher, write that you miss your class, that you're thinking about them. You could write, it could extend beyond school community to outwide community and write messages of gratitude on your door for essential workers. Share those. This could be done as a project in classrooms or through parent-teacher groups. Just for people to know that we're thinking about them and care about them is something that really goes a long way. That being said, we should celebrate students and birthdays virtually. We can have a party through online, through Google or Zoom or whatever platforms that you're using. Wear hats, make signs. The more fun you have, the better. Do this for staff as well. If someone is expecting, you can have a virtual baby shower for them. Celebrate promotions. Just make people feel really special and cared about. We want them to know that even though things look differently, that they're still important to us through this online platform. You can host an e-learning spirit week so students and staff can dress up for different days and show their pride and spirit. So some examples are pajama day, sports day, dress in school color day. Really be creative with this, and you can even tie in special things your school is doing. I know in my one of my old schools I worked at, they included families and had families dress up as different members of, themselves for the day and shared photos. And that was really fun and exciting. Another thing is virtual community building activities, such as online escape rooms, trivia nights, school-wide or classroom dance parties where everyone's dancing to the same songs and record themselves. Having a mystery reader where different members of the community share out a read aloud for students. The sky is really the limit with this, and it's just something that gets people excited and something for them to look forward to. Make sure too that you're giving shout outs for staff, students, and families for taking risks on this different platform, and give as much positive feedback to others as much as possible. When we prioritize relationships, we ensure that we keep the heart of the community strong. This is critical not only for student development, but for the emotional well-being of all. Although we may be physically distanced from each other, please make sure to take care of yourselves and others. Thank you. Now I'd like to turn things back over to Scott.
Thank you all, especially thank you, Meg. It is a genuine privilege to have such great colleagues to share with you, our viewers. Stay well and stay safe. Thank you.